Hi everyone, I'm super excited because there was a considerable amount of interest in learning not just my process, but also how we can continue to use slow stitching to help calm and ground us. I wanted to go over the supplies a little bit with you. Essentially, all you need is fabric, thread, and a needle. But I know some of you are rather particular like I am, so I wanted to go over the basics of what I use personally. I prefer to use, well, I really love using these. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to put it close. They're called the LIZBETH, and they're 20 weight. So you can see that the thread is not as thin as a normal thread would be. I prefer that because I love for my threads to show up in my stitching. So these are both at 20 weight. Now this one happens to be a 12 weight, and it's from the SULKY line. And I just ordered a variety of petites. These are called petites. They're not quite a full spool. They're like a petite spool. I like it. I love this weight. If you see the weight of the LIZBETH next to the weight of the SULKY, they look similar. But when you stitch with them, the SULKY tends to be incredibly smooth, and I've heard it compared to the RO fill. It's quite smooth. It tends to glide through the fabrics, and it doesn't leave large bumps, but it leaves enough that you can see it. And I will demonstrate all of the threads with you today so that you can see them. Please excuse me, I have a little bit of allergies. And then the other option is simply your 30-cent, this is actually the cheapest. I bought a bulk of black and a bulk of white embroidery threads once, and I do have to use, because it's so inexpensive, I have to use often like a little wax or embroidery wax to help keep it smooth, otherwise it might not. So we've gone over the 4 thread options. Let's move those out of the way. And then your fabrics. So I tend to use what's called oatmeal. I don't know if you can see, it has like little specks on it. Some of it might be some of my little scraps collecting, which I collect. Yes, I have issues. This is my ord jar, and I collect all of my little scraps that come off from fabric and thread, and I have one full, and this one is close to being full. We'll see what I can make with all of that someday, but I just didn't feel at peace throwing away such lovely little tidbits. So you have your oatmeal. It is a tight weave cotton blend, and you can find it like in any of your fabric or craft stores, but you can see it's pretty tight, and so it's not going to fall apart quickly with the needle. That is why it's so important. It's such a good base, because when you're sewing so many stitches, you want some platform, some base to keep your fabric from having too much of an abnormal look. Although I will say I am a huge fan of abnormality and the beauty that it creates. Then you just need some little scraps of fabrics. Now I've chosen all solid fabrics that are pretty different from each other today, in the hopes that you can see the stitching from the camera that way. You've seen my work, then you know that I tend to use patterns and many colors. I'm going to use solids so that I can demonstrate for you the stitches, and you can see the thread from the camera. You know, you'll need a little pair of scissors, but really any scissors would do just to cut your thread, maybe snippet some of your fabrics. Lastly, you need needles. And now, these are the needles I use right now. They are the Sashiko Gold Eye needles. They are not too expensive. I'm going to try to put links for everything in the comments below. Again, I'm winging this, so I will figure it out as I go if you would like to figure it out with me. these are some of the needles. You can see I've already started taking some of them out and using them, and some of them will be used today, but I really like how smooth they sew. And I will say I have used inexpensive needles. Every once in a while you will get lucky and have an inexpensive needle that still glides through your fabric, but for the most part they tend to catch and cause misery, and that is not the goal of what we are doing here today. That is why I have invested, and I'm telling you it, they're really not that much still, in a little bit better needle. The idea behind Sashiko stitching, which Sashiko in Japanese means little jabs, I've also heard it translated as simple stitching. And essentially, the idea is to have your stitches be mindless, which is not counterintuitive, because when you are doing a mindless, quotes, right, mindless task, you are now leaving space for your mind to focus, to be mindful, and to be grounded. And that is my hope for all of you. Eliminating and reducing the stress in our lives helps us cope and deal with chaos. So I've got some pieces of fabrics. These are all recycled fabrics. It was a men's dress shirt that I found at the convenience, the thrift store. I love this. I think it will go very far, since I do tend to buy extra large garments at the thrift store so that they can go as far as possible. I know this one's similar, but it's not the same, but it's a denim. It's just a pair of jeans that I cut up, so you can see it's a little darker. This is more of a gray, almost gray blue. And this is, you can see almost through it, if you look at the right light, is a very light weave. So look, it's coming apart so quickly. Beautiful. That's a light weave, like a cotton polyester blend from a pair of slacks that I cut up. And this is from a linen jacket, and it is up to me how I want to layer, how I want them to look. That's the beauty. The original design behind Sashiko stitching was to repair. It was a visible mending, and it was simply to repair clothing, because at the time there was such a low supply of cotton that people often would recycle and reuse their cotton and their textiles so that they could continue to have fabric. Otherwise, they just didn't have any. I'm just trimming these down a little bit so that I can make them a little bit more manageable. So my flags that I make, they do tend to be small, 2 by 3 inches about usually. And so I do tend to use small pieces of fabric. You can see this here, it can't be more than 1 inch here. But it's up to you how big you want it. There's really no right or wrong way. The only wrong way I can think of is not doing something, because then you're limiting yourself. Okay, so you're welcome to use the same color thread for the entire thing. Sashiko stitching is with denims and neutral cloths with white or sometimes like a light brown thread. I love using colored threads. In fact, I have a pink sulky ready to go that I thought might look kind of fun to add some color on some of these. So I think I love to add different colors. So I've just started, I just have a simple knot, and I just, you can see that, and I just started pushing it up from the back of the cotton and through the polyester blend. Often you'll see 1 stitch for 1 patch of fabric, 1 stitch for another patch of fabric, another stitch for another. But it's really up to you. I personally love when I see a stitch that overlaps from one fabric scrap to another. Okay, so I just did a typical slow stitch. Now the idea behind Sashiko is that it is just simply a long stitch, meaning it's going up, okay, and down. Okay, so you'll have like a running stitch, and you'll have a running stitch on the back as well. You can see that right there. Okay, but the beauty of Sashiko is that so it's kind of pulling a little, you want to keep it straight. You can do many stitches at once. So I will tend to poke a little, push a little. Okay, that means I'm going down through the fabric, and now I'm going back up. I'm going to poke a little, push a little, poke a little, and push a little. Okay, once I've got it through quite a few, I don't know, about 5, sometimes 4, I will then pull it. You can see it's bunched up like a little ruffle, and then I pull it straight so that I can see the running stitch. And look at how irregular they are. Look at, there's a gap here that's, you know, bigger than the other gaps. I love this because it shows that a human made it. Instead of going here, I'm going to go here. But it's going to be a little smaller, okay? Part of that irregular look. Now when I pull it, because it is a back stitch, it's not going to pull the entire piece into a ruffle. The idea is that it creates a more, well, at the time especially, it created a fabric blend that was more sustainable. You weren't likely to catch it on something and have the entire thing pull up into a little ruffle. Got one line of stitching all the way through. My beautiful coral pink sulky thread should make her debut. I'm going to start. I want to look at this and I want to see, I want to circle around here. Now I typically do not draw my circles on my fabrics, but you can, especially if you're beginning and it's making you nervous. And it's going to be difficult to see because this denim is so dark. You know what? It's so dark, and I want everyone to be able to see it, that I am going to actually put it underneath. But now you'll be able to see when I start with a small circle right here. That's going to be my circle to start, okay? So I'm going to start from the back. I'm going to push, poke, and you can see I'm manipulating my fabrics. Push, poke. To turn them almost so that they're going around the circle. more stitch before we finish. Okay, so I finished up the circle, and I just went until the thread ended, and I think it actually ended beautifully, and I could continue going, and I might with a white stitching, perhaps continuing the circle. I've also loved to have other circles that overlap. It's kind of fun. I decided to use the embroidery thread that is the most readily available for the last stitch. They come in little skeins like this, okay? It's not, this typical brand is not the DMC brand, but it's simply because I was able to buy it in bulk. But if I were to do it again, I probably would purchase the DMC because it tends to be better quality. These embroidery threads tend to have they have 6 threads made into one, so that they look, sorry, and I bumped the camera, so that they look thick, and you can see compared to the floss that I used for the 20 weight, it's quite a bit thicker. In fact, too thick. So you go up to the top, and you can see I already started because it's something I do with a habit now. And you start to separate your little threads. You can see them starting to separate there. Okay. And I tend to just take 2. And 2, because it's such a short piece, I can usually just pull it and it will come off. Just go slow, see? Okay, so now I've got my 2 pieces of thread and thread it through. Once you've got them together, then simply wrap it around the tip of your needle where the sharp end up here, okay? Hold it so I'm holding it, and then I just do 1, 2, 3. Now I'm holding this tight, and I pull my needle through the 3 wraps around that I did, and now you have a knot at the end. The last stitch that I'm going to teach you today, it will be, and I'm going to start actually on this blue because I'm seeing that it's like coming out, and I want it to lay flat with the other fabrics. So I'm just gonna stick it through the back, pull it through, and I mean, oh, a little piece. Now you know all my little quirks. Okay, and I'm just going to make a very small line, and ever so slightly forward, okay? And then I'm going to come over here to the side, and so it's next to it. I'm starting to push the needle through. It's next to that little line that I made. Okay, and then I'm going to just simply cross it over, creating a small X or a plus sign, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And then I'm going to create another line, and I want these to be in a line together, similar to how this white stitch was. And sometimes, in fact, I will do a long stitch and then go back, and that's fine as well. But for this instance, I want to do a little section of crosses. Go into more detail, but perhaps I'll do it another day. I think this is plenty for today. I don't want to overwhelm anyone. I just want everyone to see how imperfect and yet beautiful something can be. I would love to meet with you this weekend, Saturday. I'm thinking 10 o'clock Central Time. I've set up a little reminder time on my Instagram, on my feed, and you can share it to your own Instagram if you would like. But I was thinking I would love to do like a fireside chat, so I won't just be seeing my hands. I will put my face out for all of you and answer any questions that you might have. If you want to send them to me in advance, I can see, maybe I won't know and I can try to look it up. But I would love to just be present and spend, you know, a lot, probably 45 minutes. But it will be a stress-free time for us to visit, and perhaps we will make some friends. I would love that. Cheers, everyone.